Model minority, stereotyping Asians galore. Just how stereotypical was I? Well, let's see. Asian, Korean to be more specific. I was a part of the National Honor Society, AP course load, International Baccalaureate program, computer nerd, martial artist, son of a doctor with dreams to follow in my father's footsteps to medical school. But also the one mandatory criteria that really defines the Asian existence. Piano or violin? I was a piano player. So yeah, you could say I was pretty much a garden variety Asian kid. But also consider this. At the age of 16, I was arrested, charged as an adult, convicted of murder, and sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. I was incarcerated for 20 years before I earned my parole. Criminal justice reform is a really hot topic today, so much so that even celebrities are getting on board. People, especially juveniles like I was, are getting second chances at life. But this is 2019. It wasn't always like that. When I was charged, the year was 1992. Juveniles were being charged as adults, even if you played minor roles in the crime. Get yourself involved peripherally, you are going to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. And society thought that everyone was the better for it. So I was sent to prison. I served my time, and back then, a life sentence meant that you were going to die in prison. Life meant life. And I got out in 2012, and I returned to my hometown of Fullerton in Orange County, so a 1 OC person, yeah. And things had changed out in Orange County over 20 years. I go back, I'm all like, whoa, there are all these Korean people here. It seemed ideal that I could go back and just reacclimate into society in this culturally homogenous community. Where else is a better place to be? But that's not what happened. 20 years later, and people still remembered the incident. It was the Sunny Hills High School murder. The press labeled it the honor roll murder. The story of the doctor's son who got sentenced to life in prison was the topic of many sit-down conversations that Korean parents had with their children. And I'd like to say here that this horrible tragedy, this incident, I was not one of the main actors. I was a peripheral player in it. But regardless of whether I was, this devastating tragedy to the victim's family, to my family, my arrest, my trial, my incarceration, it was all a part of my life. And it wasn't something I had any intent to hide. But so many people already knew about it that really there was no hiding from it. And I was open about my experience, but it made people uncomfortable. Someone actually told me, man, that wasn't cool that you told me about that. Hold on. You want me? I was locked up from 16 to 36. My teens, my 20s, and the majority of my 30s spent in a concrete box. How many of you can live a life not being able to talk about those formative years? But you know what? I wanted to fit in. I wanted to go back into society and acclimate. So I lied. I hid the truth. And I realized there was a lot of pressure because I couldn't talk about anything. People couldn't ask me, why did you get that word? Why do you have that opinion? Why do you see things in that way? And it was a lot of stress. And at this point, it was 2014. And one of my friends from inside, another ex-lifer, made it home. He took one look at me and said, what the hell happened to you? You're not the same person who left prison. When I was in prison, I developed a sense of self. I developed a level of self-confidence that I never had before. And I became a leader in the community in prison. And coming back to the Korean community that I left at 16, the community that broke me down, coming back to that community, I started becoming the insecure, spineless kid that I was at 16. And it took my friend coming home, who didn't know me as this person outside, to point it out to me and say, what's wrong with you? And it was at that point that I realized, I can't be around API anymore. The pressure is just far too strong. It's making me the person I don't want to be. And it was around this time that criminal justice reform started building momentum. And I started working in the justice advocacy space. I found that I was a powerful advocate to help in reform and reentry. I was helping people who were just coming home from prison and dealing with the same issues that I had dealt with just 2 years before. But look at me. I didn't look the part. Most nonprofits dealt with, the focus was on the black and brown population. And everyone looked at me and thought, oh, what are you, some lawyer, social worker? No, I did 20 years in prison. And so as more and more people came home, people that I knew on the inside, they're all like, Kirn, it's so good to see you, man. Yeah, this is great. I had a circle of friends that I can hang out with. But a lot of times, I kind of stuck out like a sore thumb. I was, the only Asian guy hanging around a bunch of bald-headed, tattooed Mexicans. But API folk like you and me, we're all a part of the brotherhood and sisterhood that deals with mass incarceration. But because of cultural shame, we're taught to hide it, forget about it. If you've done like 1 or 2 years, yeah, you might be able to give that up and just say, oh yeah, I was in a drunken stupor and I was dumb and but I'm over that and I've gotten my head together. But what about people like me? People who lost so much of their lives to incarceration. Even my father questioned my decision to work in this space. He looked at me and said, why are you working with those people? That stunned me, because my parents supported me throughout my incarceration. They visited me all the time. They supported me financially after I got out until I could stand on my own. But yet, the cultural shame was so ingrained in my father that he couldn't see me for who I was. I was one of those people. And by helping them, I was taking care of my own. Taking care of your own, isn't that an Asian thing too? So, as more API lifers started getting out, we were able to form a nonprofit, API Rise, which is focusing on support and reentry for the API population. And I'm glad to say that I have a number of my API Rise members here. Would you please stand? Come on. Oh, that's it? And what's great about this, recently there was one gentleman who came home, 23 years of a life sentence, and he went to a halfway house. He was just absorbing his first few hours of being free, and the director of the halfway house was on his way to the API Rise fundraiser, and said, hey, come along. And at first this guy's like, where are you taking me? There's a lot of Asian people going to be there. So it's like, damn, I'm going to have to face Asian people. You'll have them look at me all funny. This guy just did 23 years in prison. But no. He found fellowship. He found support. He found love. His first meal was cooked by a fellow former API ex-lifer. And you wonder, why can't every API coming home get that kind of reception? Why does he have to worry about how is my community going to see me when I first get out? So I want to leave you this. Think about that shame. More so, doing away with that shame. As we all know, concepts of shame and family honor permeate API culture. In most ways, family honor is good, but shame and hiding is not. The public face of the API population, strong, hardworking, successful in education and business, church-going family units that never get divorced. But we all know that's an exaggeration. We have hardships. We face adversity. Yet certain issues like mental health, financial struggles, disability, all these are left hidden in the dark out of some sense of weakness or shame. There are these taboo topics like having an LGBTQ relative that no one wants to talk about. I'm pleased to say that slowly discussions on these topics are starting to come out. People are willing to discuss these issues, but yet there's still one topic that stays silent, stays in the dark. It's the silent shame of incarceration. Why should we hide and suffer when we've paid our debt to society? My hope is that the API community can come together, push aside these cultural shames and taboos. But I'm not limiting my work to API issues. I've been doing a lot of work in the incarceration and reentry space in general. Small as a giant, future IDs at Alcatraz. These are two projects involving incarceration and reentry where I've played a major role in their development. But there's something bigger I have in mind. When I first came home, I took up my childhood love, computers, being the nerd that I was. I took some coding classes and I did well. I earned a small scholarship after my first year. But when I went to STEM job seminars, I was told, there's no way a tech company is going to take a chance on you because of your record. I was floored, but I knew that was something I had to deal with. But I was also advised to go find a startup because startups are allowed to take a chance. So I did. But when the startup went to get licensing for the game they were developing, they were told, if that guy's on your staff, you're not going to get a license. So you can imagine how much that broke me. But today, Silicon Valley and the tech sector, they're supporting initiatives on reentry and reform. My vision now is to find a way to partner with large tech entities and their advocacy outreach initiatives and find ways to lift up issues on reform and reentry. But you know, the geek in me, I also want to get in there and contribute to all the techie, nerdy, gadgetry stuff that this advanced placement, international baccalaureate honor society kid could have done. But I want to do it to a way where I can bring these two spaces together in union to build a safer and healthier society. And I plan to do that with no shame. Thank you.